I'm Craig Nadeau, and I'm here today with Sonya Sharp, who's running for mayor for Calgary in this 2025 election. I'm excited to have you, Sonya. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you, Craig, for having me.
Cool. So you've been on city council now for the last 4 years-ish, roughly, and good experience, new experience, exciting experience. What's it? Give me a quick summary.
It has had its ups and downs.
Yeah.
How about that?
Yeah.
I will say that it takes a lot. I mean, I quit my job after 20 years to run for council,
Yeah.
and I thought things were going to be different right away. Like, and there was a lot of things thrown your way. You're going to be in the public eye. All of
Sure.
that didn't
Yeah.
affect me. That wasn't what I was concerned about. It was more about, working with individuals you had never met before,
Right.
working with
Yeah.
them and trying to all align in the same sort of, I would just say policies and
Yeah.
values. And a lot of us didn't.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
day one, we're already broken up, I would say.
Yeah, and that's really interesting too, because I think when you went on to council, I've seen, items online saying that this city council was, such a new city council. It was like one of the newest that had ever existed, and a bunch of newbies essentially jumping in. That would be interesting, because I think most of us, when we start a new job, we're going into a job where we're the new person and everyone else has already been there, but then you're going into it. So that must have been really interesting experience.
Yeah, it was because like I said, I had the administrative experience because I had
Yeah.
just quit and ran, and there was some incumbents there that had come back.
Yeah.
But having, some conversations with those new candidates and councillors that were elected, and now some aren't running again. So you can
Right.
kind of see,
Yeah. Yeah.
this job was not for them. I
Yeah.
almost picked that right away, like saw that in
Mhm.
them. And I think a lot of people thought this job was going to be very different what they anticipated.
Yeah.
And it's public service work. And
Yeah.
I think, there's no glory to this. It's a thankless job, and you got to
Yeah.
do it because you have passion to do it. You don't
Right.
do it for, some sort of personal agenda. You got to do it for the people. Yeah, I ran for council, I won, and now I'm running for mayor, and got to get things back on track. There's a lot of reasons why I kind of decided to throw my name in the hat, and it's a little bit different this time. I'm running with a team of people and talk a little bit about that, building
We got to
relationships.
understand that a bit. Like that's the
Yeah.
Communities First
Communities
organization.
First Party, yeah.
So this is kind of new to me. So
Okay.
and probably to most people. So what's the idea? Give me
Well, I'll give you like the pitch. It was like
Yeah.
it was a pilot project that came from the provincial government. Really what they wanted to do was legitimize what happened in 2021. There was already a slate elected. It was called Calgary's Future, and they're at it again already. And so a few of us got together and started to talk a little bit about what this looked like. And it was myself, Councillor McLean, Councillor Chabot, and Councillor Wong. But we needed 5 to create a party or a team. I like to call it a team because we're not bound by party politics. We're not bound by a flag. We're not bound. We made up the name Communities First. And so we started to put this group together, this team, and I am, the only mayor candidate being endorsed by incumbents on council. And that's, that's huge. That means people turned to me and said, please run for mayor, and because they work there. And now we're a team of 10, and we know that we need 8 votes to get things across the finish line on council. So each individual member of Communities First is unique to the ward they're going to be serving. And we're all very different from each other. Some of the candidates are, have run for different parties in the past. Some of them worked for provincial and federal offices before. Myself and Councillor Wong, we have administrative experience. Councillor Chabot worked on council, left, ran for mayor, didn't win, came back, and here he is again. And so we're all very different, but we care a lot, and we share the same common values and principles and policies, and really focused on, making this a really safe, affordable city. And the biggest thing too is we want to regain trust from Calgarians. Like, I was on this council. Can you imagine waking up in the morning and seeing the paper headline, like worst council ever? That is, wow.
Was that the headlines?
I don't know if it was I read it that way. I mean, like for me, I was like,
Wow.
whoa, I have never been on like the worst of anything. Like, come on, right? Like that's bad.
Yeah.
And so, when you read that hurts a bit, because you spend a lot of time representing people, and then you realize, oh, wait a minute, that's not me. That's not some of my colleagues I work with. That's the majority that's not listening. And so that's okay. And so, but there was a narrative out there. There was an opinion. Like, you read the headlines now, oh, you got to get rid of all of them. Like we're all like some virus. It's like we're not, right? And so I think what's important is that, we really identify ourselves as the contenders out there, as communities first. And, I know that some people ask me like, what makes you different from the rest of them? Like, the other candidates. And a couple things is I have business experience. I've seen City Hall from a business owner. I've seen City Hall from the inside for 20 years. And now I sat on council for 4. So I have 3 different point of views. None of my opponents have that. And I have seen things in the inside and I know how to fix it. I was on the minority side of council. I tried. And I'm going to say I wasn't afraid to keep going. And now I'm running for mayor. And I think that Calgarians are looking for someone they can trust and rely on to actually serve them and listen.
Interesting. So I'm going to double back to worst council ever, which, yeah, I would agree. It would be hard to, I don't know, someone would have to show me the metric, what that actually means. But so if you were to look back over the last 4 years, and I think, other than, I think the water main break was a big issue, but, it's pretty, I don't know, all you can really do, I think, in your role there is you have to manage it. Like you're not, right. You were not responsible for the water main breaking. Like, and I think people need to, understand that. But
the actual burst of the water main was like not like directly our fault. I mean,
yeah, you have just managed the outcome, right? And then, but over that 4-year period, what was, when you look back at it and you're going to say, you're going to write in your journal, but you only have 20 minutes. What are the big things that council achieved during that time frame that anyone would even care about?
There were a lot of things achieved that people do care about, declaring a climate emergency, blanket rezoning the city, high taxes for 4 years, infrastructure issues, a failed arena, and then a new arena, a failed green line, now finally back on track, and there's more, I know, just like a lot of the planning, aspirational goals that, are not achievable. And so those, a bag bylaw, canceling fireworks. Now you see why we were always painted with the worst council ever. And so
Grinchy attitude, man.
Well, and so when you are part of that, people think that's you. And so I really just needed to remove myself from that and started to show Calgarians I'm not part of that group that you're not happy with. And, I started to have councillors come on that group a little bit. And really, because like these are a lot of things and we've done some good things. I can't say we haven't. We've invested in things that are important. But, when we got statistics the other day saying that we had 35,000 or something like that potholes last year. Holy moly. Like that's a lot. Yeah. And so what do we need to do for better roads? And this stuff people are craving. They want you to take things back to basic, fix your road, some of the issues on the pathways, look at infrastructure like water. The water main break, I mean, I know it wasn't directly our fault, but how did we get here? That's the question. How did we not know something like this was going to happen? And then, people just want lower taxes. They want you to be able to explain why their taxes increased 20% minimum over 4 years. They want to understand the why.
Yeah, it was funny. I was listening to the radio, Sonya, and someone said there's a contest where you can win. I think it's like close to 30 plus grand right now. And someone said, well, what are you going to do with it? And they said, I'm going to save up so I can pay my increased taxes to the city. It's just so like, oh my goodness, how is that front of mind right now? That's a little scary.
Well, affordability is, right? Like, I mean, your bottom line matters. And as council, we can only control so much, and that's the tax rate. Yeah. Everything else, like, we can't control inflation. We can't control any sort of tariffs that are imposed on us. Assessments are still out of our control. They're, a different governing body, and all of that compounds on people. Yeah. And when you're going to get groceries and gas, like it makes a dent.
When you're looking forward into this next 4-year period, what do you think or anticipate would be that that top group of issues that you're going to be struggling with or having to manage going forward?
I think, what I'm hearing, and it's been around the city. It's not now just in one ward or a quadrant. Public safety, like the safety of our city is critical. And so I've pledged, for 500 police officers over the next couple of years, just to get up to the national average, a 24/7 police station downtown. Those are important things. Transit safety. We have our own employees being attacked. Like, who's going to take trains and buses if our own employees aren't feeling safe? Blanket rezoning. I've pledged to repeal it, reinstate what was there, reform the planning department. These are really big, important things that people are asking us to go back and do. And then the other thing is having a little bit more, I would say, governance around senior administration. Everyone can have a platform and everyone can have great ideas. But if senior administration doesn't realize who their bosses are, nothing's going to happen. So that's another piece of work that I'm going to, start tackling a little bit, and just saying, we have increased taxes, and you use citizen satisfaction surveys. Great. That's really important. People have a right to, fill out those surveys, but you also have to follow council direction. And last week when we wrapped up council and I saw the council budget preview for November, I was not impressed. I'll be honest. I knew the 5.4% was going to be in there. We knew that wasn't really going to change, but just the things that were put in that document that weren't council directed. And, we asked these questions to administration. Well, who put that in the budget? Oh, well, we did. I'm sorry. What? Like, you're supposed to be taking our direction, and citizen satisfaction is important, but there's a balance. And so I think there's a bit of, I would say they've lost their way when it comes to a little bit of the senior leadership there.
It's in 2 points. One is maybe just a point, and then the other is kind of a broader thing. But I think the blanket rezoning is an interesting thing, because if my kids are going to vote this year, like I have 3 kids that will vote. And if I said, oh yeah, blanket rezoning, that's a big deal, and they'd be like, no idea. Why do we need blankets? And they have no clue what that is. And I think we shouldn't, we probably should move away from using that kind of terminology, which doesn't mean anything to, it's a large percentage of the population that have no idea what blanket rezoning means. How does it impact me? What is it? So repeal it. I don't care. What difference does it make?
I think what it is reinstating your voice back at council. That's what happened. So they removed your voice, or your young adults' voices, from speaking to things that are happening in their community when it comes to development. And that's what it took away. That is actually what upset everybody. It was one thing to say that you can come speak to your elected official, but they removed that in the process. We've now removed your right to speak to your elected official on a development in your neighborhood. That's how I would
have some say in it. Like, I think what we have to do is maybe rebrand blanket rezoning as, I think the community needs to have a say in the development of their community.
100%,
not just
and they always should.
What a blanket rezoning doesn't mean anything. It's just funny words. What's the other thing I was going to say too, Sonya, is that when I think back to 4 years, we were having these conversations, and there's a marked difference between today and 4 years ago. Today we're talking about safety way more, and like kind of not minutia, but like, because obviously safety is a big deal, but we're talking about some of these, interface type issues. Whereas I think 4 years ago, the conversation was more about how we're going to build Calgary and make Calgary this bastion of, commerce in the world, and turn Calgary into something great. And it'd be really interesting to analyze what happened. What's the difference between 4 years ago, and have we deteriorated as a city? Have we gotten better as a city? Like, why are we having this different conversation today than we did 4 years ago? And it's different for sure.
Oh, it's very different. Yeah, very different. Safety wasn't really an issue. We were also campaigning during COVID last time.
Yeah,
I also think there was a lot more ideology presented last election, aspirational, ideas that were unachievable. Like, there are things that came to council and passed, and I would vote against it. And, it would leave council floor, and I'd turn to some of my colleagues who we would think the same. And I'd be like, good luck with that. That's never going to happen. Yeah. That's the thing. The focus, like, you need to be laser focused on what Calgarians are asking for. And so, 4 years ago was a little bit different. We were in COVID. Maybe safety was an issue. Maybe people weren't riding trains as much, but there was a bit of a safety thing going on. But no one was paying attention to it. Yeah. And there were so many other distractions. And so when you're putting distractions on council floor, you're forgetting about what actually matters. But guess
Yeah.
what? Now Calgarians are turning around and saying, oh, no, this does matter now. I
Yeah.
cannot take the train. I cannot walk in my street. I can't drive on the roads because the potholes. So now you feel like Calgarians are pushing back. And I'll tell you one thing, the conversation at the doors are very different. People are angry. The word
Mhm.
change, uncertainty, those things are all coming up more and more.
Yeah,
4
that's
years
fair.
ago, it was more like, what are you going to do for the city? I don't want my taxes to go up. But your taxes go up. Now you are 4 years later. So what did my taxes pay for?
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. I think, you're probably right too, because I think when you think back 4 years ago, I think there was more certainty around what was going to happen with the Saddle Dome and the Green Line. It kind of felt like, we're on the right path, things are going to work out. And then 4 years later, and it's like, whoa, what just happened? Like, we just spent 4 years and where are we now? You're right. That's very interesting because I think some of those big things were more inspirational, as you're saying, like they were out there and we were hanging on to them. So yeah, that's a good point. That's interesting. So you had, I think one of the things that you talk about too is the climate change crisis that we're experiencing. So what's your take? You have
You know what?
15 seconds.
Okay, so I'll say one thing, I'm not a
Yeah,
climate denier. I know the landscape of the world's changing when it comes to the environment. What
sure.
we are talking about when it comes to climate emergencies and change at work, at City Hall, is staying in your lane. What can you achieve as a municipal government? And how can you
Yeah.
play a supporting role and advocate to the provincial and federal government? And we're doing some great things, continue doing them. But you don't need an emergency declaration to do that work.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, and I think people were surprised 4 years ago when it's like, well, how is that the first thing we're going to talk about?
I
We
think
have
with
all these other
me,
things.
yeah, I will say one thing is that there will be no surprises. What you see right now coming at, like what I say, is how I am going to lead. There will be no
Mhm.
surprises when it comes to some of the things I'm really, focusing on and want to deliver for Calgary in the next 4 years.
So, Sonia, now that you've been in the inner belly of this machine, and you look at the mayor role, I'm to an outsider. I don't sit in there and watch what goes on. What's the mayor need to do? What's the mayor need to be good at to be a good mayor? Because at one level, you're still like, you're just voting. You're in there
Yeah, we're one
voting and
vote. Yeah,
yeah, you're
and
one
I'll
vote,
say
but
one thing, the mayor is one vote, but the mayor's role is to be calm and lead and be a pillar and really bring consensus. And we're not
Mhm.
always going to get 15 or unanimous, but just bring people together in their ideas and not be divisive. This has been the most divisive council we've ever seen. And
Yeah.
I'll say one of the reasons I'm running is because when incumbents turn to me and say, you need to be the mayor, you need to run for mayor, I show leadership. That's really, I'm honored by that. I have brought consensus on a lot of contentious items, and I have seen a lot of people on council not like me and say things, and that's okay. But they'll support me because they know that there's it's the reason to support it, and we'll fight tooth and nail to get that vote. But your job is to bring 14 people together and represent Calgary, not yourself, not an ideology. Your agenda is the agenda of Calgarians, and you need to lead by example. And I'll say, when I have 9 candidates now supporting me and saying, we want you to be our mayor, that is telling. And right now, there's only one other candidate running who has a party behind him. And, I would say that's 15 new members of council, though. He's running with a new batch of, newbies. I have history of being on council. I'm working with incumbents, and we have a track record of, really representing Calgarians.
That's really interesting. You say that this is a divisive council, like that it's gotten that way. And from the outside, how would we know that? Like unless you followed every single voting situation or whatever, like you'd have to be in the inner workings of it to see it, wouldn't you? Like otherwise, how would you know?
Well, I'll put it this way. There are so many empty seats after
Yeah.
1-year term councilors that have left.
Mm,
That is also very telling. There are 8 empty seats in this election because I've given up my
yeah.
seat to run for mayor, but we're very divisive. We have had some really strong headlines, and it doesn't
Mhm.
it doesn't take anyone long to look at that. And just the fact too is, you do what you can. You try to remember that there's life after politics, but some of the stuff that had been said even on council floor is just disappointing. It was, like very personal. And it's like, this
Mm.
isn't like, park the personal stuff. It's, this is about representation and about you as a leader for as the people that elected you. You have a shelf life. And in order to keep that shelf life going, Calgarians need to continue to vote for you. So I would say, yeah, divisive, and our track record of, hey, hitting headlines as worst council ever doesn't help.
Yeah. Do you think that this, like, I feel like when I think back to previous councils, not this current one, but it feels like there was more, I don't know, like intrigue. Like there was like kind of, oh my goodness, what just happened to that councillor? And then it was kind of more in the news. But this council seems to, it's a little quiet. Like there, you may see it on the inside, but it's not really hitting the news as, oh, this councillor just, did this crazy thing. It feels like that's not there, but maybe on the inside, it's a different sense.
Yeah, on the inside, there's definitely a different perspective, and I think administration would say the same thing. We've had I think that we've had our councillor headlines over the last couple of years. There's been a couple of councillors that have made some headlines on things that they've done, and they're not running again, and that's their decision. But again, like, you got to park the ego, you got to park the personal stuff, and you need to lead. And also, is as much as we were divisive, I think some of us know, like, there's got to be a sense of respect. A lot of us are parents, and some of them are young, have young families. And when I stand up there and I debate and I lead, I want my boys, who are teenagers now, to look back and say, I'm proud of my mom for defending, or I'm proud of my mom to lead. I don't want my kids to ever turn around and be like, oh, my mom should never have said that, right? Like, you're a role model, and I'm a role model, not like, I might be a role model to other people, but I have two people that look up to me and say, I'm proud of my mom, or, and my parents, and, my family. That these are important things.
That's important.
You are always in the public eye, and your character and your values, that comes out. And so, I think my integrity is really important. I learned a lot from my parents, and I don't want to disappoint them. So, I choose my words wisely, and I try not to, say things I might regret. But I know that I hear it also from my constituents. When I do something that's bold, I hear from them, and they're happy. Then I know I'm doing my job.
Yeah, that's cool. We only have not too long, but what's your hopes for Calgary? Like, and this is kind of like standing way up over top. What's our hope for this? What's our hope for this little city here?
I would say my hope is an affordable, safe city that works for everybody and every human being. I mean that, whatever religion, culture, for everyone, and that you can trust City Hall again. That is my hope for the city.
Yeah. Do you think that we've fallen off of having a trustworthy City Hall? Like, we're not there right now. Yeah, 100%. That's an important message. Like, people need to kind of get that. So,
and I know it's hard because people are like, well, you're just a politician. And I'll say, I have a title, but I'm a public servant. And, you're going to trust the people that come in front of your house that have to dig up the water main break.
Yeah.
I hope that you can trust the person sitting in the horseshoe that can fund that group that does the water main break. And that's really important. The trusted City Hall is broken, and we know that. And so I know it's not going to happen overnight, but I am ready to make it happen.
Yeah, that's exciting. Well, it's been a pleasure having you on, and I'm glad to be able to interact with you, and hopefully the election goes well, and hopefully the next, I guess we're at weeks now, really.
Weeks,
so
I know, so exciting.
Weeks, so yeah, that's exciting. So we'll see what our brave new world has before the snow flies. So, but best of luck, and hopefully it goes well. All right, thanks for your time, Sonya.